Call, please.
McGuire. Patterson. Rector. Storr. Summers. Taylor. Thorsland.
Here.
Tinsley. Wolken. Young.
Here.
Clemens.
Here.
Clifford. Cowart. Dillard Myers.
Here.
Eisenman. Esri. Fierce. Fortato. Goss.
Here.
Harper. Ingram.
Howdy.
Rosales.
Here. Could I get somebody to move the approval of the agenda and addenda? Moved by Connie, seconded by Jody. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Could I get somebody to approve the minutes of January 14th, 2020? Moved by Eric, seconded by John Richter. Pardon? Comments?
Correction, or at least an inquiry. On page 3, I noticed that motion by Ms. Taylor to amend, approval of primary judge election numbers. It says discussion followed where cuts were to be made and so forth. I believe that this was mostly made by Clerk Aaron Ammons. And that might be noted in the.
Discussion's just in general. It's not saying that you were making the discussion.
I
Can you
didn't
speak a
hear.
little louder, Megan,
The
so we could hear
discussion's
you?
just in general that everybody spoke about. It's not saying that you were discussing all of that. You just seconded the motion.
No, I was referring to the fact that I think a good deal of this was made, the discussion or some things like where cuts were going to be made, savings and so forth, was mostly presented by Ms. Clerk Aaron Ammons.
Are you saying you just want it noted who made the statements?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, all those in approving with the changes to the minutes? You have one more change, Chris? He does. Oh, okay, no, I'm not hurrying.
No.
No more changes. Are there any further comments on the minutes of January 14th? Let it be noted that notation was made regarding the statements that were directed by Aaron Ammons. And that'll be noted by Megan, our administrative assistant. Thank you, Darlene, as well. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Public participation, we have first Dottie Vera Weiss. Dottie, thank you for coming out and bearing the cold weather.
Good evening, and it's good to see you folks again, and appreciate what you're doing, being out on this cold night also. I wanted to talk about some of the things that are already in process that will help to decrease the number of people who are going to need to be held in our county jail. And some of them are things that various community members and groups have initiated on their own. Others are things that were recommended in the reports from ILPP and from the Community Justice Task Force, and some of which have been started and some haven't been. But just as a reminder that what's needed in terms of how many beds are available and what types of accommodations there are, some of that is under the control of the community and this board, as well as mental health board and other organizations in the community. So, community-initiated services. In terms of programs for what some folks call our neighbors without an address, people who don't have homes. See You at Home, which put on one winter night on Friday, is in the process of working on a year-round homeless shelter and extending that to include Austin's Place services for women as well as for men. And they've already switched from being a dry shelter, which means that somebody who had alcohol on their breath could not be involved, could not come in, to being a damp shelter, where as long as the behavior isn't a problem, they can be there. And so that's made a difference for them. We've long had an inadequate reservoir of services for people with mental health problems and substance use disorder problems. This is being addressed somewhat by Rosecrans and by Promise Healthcare Services, which runs the Francis Nelson Clinic. And so there's hope that they can do some more, but that it has been started. And that will make a significant difference, just as the fact that there are already assessment and referral going on in the jail so that people, when they leave the jail, are connected to services. There's work going on with people talking about a program to have a crisis and triage and referral center for people in crisis related to mental health or substance issues. And this is going to require a lot of different organizations, including our hospitals, as well as getting some residential and inpatient facilities available, but also could be available to people in the community, as well as a place for law enforcement to take them. And that's being led by somebody out in the community. The First Followers Reentry Services Program, as you probably know, has expanded from just having drop-in services and support and referral to having their first transition house in Champaign, where men coming back from prison can stay for the time that they need to and continue to get the supportive services. There's also an organization called Women in Need Recovery, or WIN Recovery, which has already opened one house for women returning from prison and or residential drug treatment centers. And so that's already in motion, and they're about to open their second house. And for people who can't afford bail, there is a Champaign County Bailout Coalition, which provides up to $500, which would be adequate for a $5,000 bail amount, and does make phone calls to people to remind them of the court dates. And so far, out of 22 people that they've helped, only one has missed their court date. Some of them still have future court dates, but it's really done well that way. A few of them have been arrested again while they were out, but I don't know details, but I don't believe that it's been violent crimes that were involved. One of the things mentioned in the ILPP report was to increase the use of a citation and notice to appear in court instead of arresting somebody for a minor offense. And I understand that that's been done to some extent, but that's something that the local police departments as well as the sheriff's department need to do. And so that's another area that could be expanded on. Carol Ammon spoke to you several months ago about changes at the state level that will limit the amount of people that are going to be impacted by bail. And there was a law went into effect in 2018 that started this process. And when that went into effect, there was a drop of 10 to 20 people in jail as an average right then. And so there's more that'll be coming for that. And another problem with people failing to appear in court is they forget about it. And so I just spoke with the circuit clerk, and she said the automated phone calls or automated text messages are in beta testing now, and that's going to be starting up real soon. And we expect that will stop people from going into the vicious cycle of they miss an appointment one time, so if they have an encounter with police the next time, they would be refused the option of being out of jail. They would be required to be in jail. So that's another change that's going to make a big difference. There are others as well, but I figured that that's just a taste of it, so that as you're considering what you're going to be doing about jail renovation and consolidation, that that will help to put it in perspective, that you don't even have the $47 million to spend on it, and that money, smaller amounts of money can be used for some of these other programs, and that's going to further decrease the amount that you need to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vera, for giving us all that information. Do you have a website, an umbrella website, where all of these services are provided so that citizens could go to that website and use some of those services? Thank you. Great. Next, we have, thank you for coming out, Vera. Next, we have Nathan Poloski. Did I pronounce that correctly? Okay. I wasn't sure if it was an O or an A. Great. Thank you for coming out as well, Nathan.
Hello, my name's Nathan Pulaski. I'm a precinct committee person for the Democrats for Cunningham 22, and I'm just here to respond to comments made by Chairman Rosales at the last meeting in regards to why he again went against the recommendations of precinct committee persons when filling the vacancy for County Board District 9. Chair Rosales stated that he puts little weight on the precinct committee person's recommendations because they don't attend board meetings and the selections are essentially a popularity contest. I'd first like to say I find it kind of hypocritical to say that precinct committee person's recommendations don't count because we don't attend meetings, and then appoint the applicants to the board who hadn't attended board meetings over those who had. Secondly, I think it's kind of insulting to say the precinct committee person's recommendations were just based on popularity and not the issues. I was never reached out to on why I voted the way I did when I helped make the recommendation to fill the vacancy for District 10. And as far as I'm aware, Chair Rosales has never asked any precinct committee person their reasoning for selecting the candidate they did in either District 9 or 10. I was not at the meeting for the District 9 appointment, but I know after the candidates were questioned for the District 10 seat, there was a robust discussion about the issues facing the board and which candidate would be best to address them. So I'm extremely insulted that Chair Rosales would belittle the thought process the committee people put into when making their recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out and sharing that information, Nathan. Great. Next, we have a couple pieces of paper in front of your desk. Before we end public participation we're going to go into item 6, which is the presentation by Sheriff's Department. So you have that in front of you, the Sheriff Annual Report. You also have a few appointments made by Darlene Klopel, Locust Grove Cemetery and Lincoln Legacy Committee. So that's this orange sheet or plum. And last but not least, you have a canary yellow document that includes all social service programs that the county provides. And this was put together by Darlene as well, of all of our resources that we put for the community and social justice programs. So without further ado, I would like to move into communications. Page 9, you have a letter from the Mohammed Seymour Community School.
Geraldo, Dustin's going to do the presentation.
Okay, I jumped to number 7. Okay, I'm sorry about that, Dustin. You're next, item number 6.
You wouldn't have broken my heart. Evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. I hope you all got an opportunity to take a look at the annual report. My office put a lot of work into it. I think this is the first annual report since Dave Madigan was in office. And so obviously you know about some of our limitations with data that we're working on and things like that. And so this was done within the limitations of our data, but I think it's a pretty good comprehensive report that'll give you a good idea about what the sheriff's office has done over the last year, as well as stats that I could come up with how we compare to a couple of years before that as well. And then everybody likes pictures, so I tried to throw in as many pictures as I could to get you guys to know us a little bit better, because I know you know very few sheriff's office employees. So very briefly, wanted to highlight a few of the things here. So let's start with patrol. With patrol, we had a calls for service increase by about 1,748, more than in 2018, which puts us at about 24,654 calls for service in 2019. Physical arrest increase, we had 30 more arrests in 2019 than we did in 2018 with 645. That does not include traffic citations or notices to appear and things like that. This number is just physical arrests made by the sheriff's office within 2019. Civil papers served. I have 2 full-time civil service processors. They all they do is serve papers, but my deputies also serve papers after hours to help them out. All in all, we had 7,756 civil papers served last year. Those include anything from subpoenas to orders of protection to eviction notices and things like that. The sheriff's office is mostly responsible for all of the civil service here in the county that comes from the state. We had 1,833 traffic citations, 3,511 traffic warnings. Now, I don't want you to put those together and say we had 1,833 plus 3,511 traffic stops, because that's not necessarily true. It was difficult for me to get the actual number of traffic stops. We had no more than that. But sometimes somebody is given 2 citations, for an example. Or on a DUI, they could be given potentially 3 or 4 citations. And so we can't just add those numbers together, but our total traffic stops would be less than the combination of those. My deputies are required to either write a ticket or a warning. Whenever they pull somebody over. There's no verbal warnings at the sheriff's office or generally anywhere anymore law enforcement wise. So all of our traffic stops are documented, including racial profiling data and things like that per state statute.
You said that you have to give something by state statute?
We do. Well, we have to keep demographic information by state statute. And so obviously with verbal warnings, we can't do that. And so it's either a warning or a traffic ticket, yes. We saw motor vehicle accident decrease in 2019. I broke it down a little bit here. So we had a total of 543 total accidents in 2019 compared to 653 in 2018. Those included 49 less property damage accidents, 54 less personal injury accidents, and 7 less fatalities. So in 2018, we had 9 fatalities. In 2019, we had 2. I wish I could take credit for that, but I haven't been in office long enough to do that. So we'll see how the trends go in the future. As you know, we have 3 patrol canines, and we also have 1 canine at the courthouse. That's an explosives canine. I did not include statistics for our explosives canine, though I know he has been out on a couple of tracks from bank robberies, and also he has located a couple of guns over the last year. But generally, he is just called out from the courthouse whenever we don't have a patrol canine on. Just our patrol canines, the use of our 3 canines last year resulted in 39 arrests, 1.5 kilograms of marijuana seized, 80 grams of cocaine seized, 106 grams of methamphetamine seized, 2 grams of heroin, and 2 discarded handguns located. Generally what that means is somebody fled a scene, they knew they had a gun, they discarded it, they called out the dog to track them, and the dog found the gun. So all in all, very useful tools for us in the patrol division. We hired 8 new deputies in 2019. 2 of those were laterals, and the rest had no experience as an officer. With our Administrative Services Division, AKA the guys and gals that work in my front office, in addition to processing all of those civil papers and all of those traffic citations and all of those warnings, we also had 2,603 warrants that we processed. These warrants come over from the Circuit Clerk's Office and from the State's Attorney's Office. The Champaign County Sheriff's Office is responsible for housing those warrants and also making sure that they're up to date in what we call our lead system. That means that when anybody statewide and sometimes nationwide runs somebody's name, they will know if they have a Champaign County warrant or not. So my staff is responsible for keeping those records as well. Moving on to corrections. You all know we are in the process of updating our correctional system, so that will allow us for a lot better statistics. But I think I happened to weed through all of the statistics and get some pretty solid stats here. Annual jail intake for 2019 was 5,505. This is not just Sheriff's Office. This is everybody who's arrested in Champaign County for a state offense, so that would include the interstate, the cities, etc., are brought to the Champaign County Jail. So this number includes all of those who were brought in the doors of the Champaign County Jail because of an arrest. That was 259 more than in 2018. However, 2019 is still the second lowest year out of the last 7. It was easiest for me to go back stats to 2013, and so this last year was the second lowest in that time period. We had an average of 15 intakes per day to the jail and 14 releases. That doesn't mean that 14 of the people who came in were released. There could be potentially that somebody bonded out, somebody served their sentence, etc. But an average of 15 per day coming into the jail, an average of 14 per day going out. Average daily population in 2019 was 185.04. This does not include electronic home detention. We have a program to where those who are sentenced and meet certain criteria, the judge can approve for them to serve their sentence out in the community with electronic monitoring. We averaged, 32 last year, so 32 a month, I would say 32 a day, somewhere around those lines. We've been up to about 50, 51 at any time during 2019. So that daily population of 185.04 does not include electronic home monitoring because they're not under our roof. That is 21.53 higher than in 2018, but again, the second lowest in the last 7 years. Average number of days in custody in 2019 was 15.37. The 7-year average is 15.05. And if you look at the report, you can kind of see it fluctuates throughout the years as the years go on. It's high one year, down in the other one, back high the next year, etc. Programs in the jail increased from 22 to 28. We hired 7 new correctional officers in 2019 and 6 new either part-time or full-time, a combination of controllers. What the controllers do, they're the ones who answer the phones at the jail. They're the ones, my correctional officers do not have keys to different things. So my controllers are the ones who push the button to let somebody, the correctional officers and inmates into certain doors. Court security, we hired 4 new court security officers last year. 2 transferred from the jail and 2 were new to the sheriff's office. And then lastly, most of you realize that the Emergency Management Agency in Champaign County reports to the sheriff. All in all, we handed out 28 weather alert radios. I believe these were free of charge for people who have no other way to be warned of severe weather. Trained 105 new weather spotters. Facilitated 31 emergency preparedness exercises. These can be in the community with nursing homes, with hospitals, organizations like that. Coordinated 30 community events to ensure weather safety. What do you do in a severe weather event? And then responded to 3 search and rescue calls, which also includes a lot of volunteers that come out and are trained for search and rescue techniques. Just recalling off the top of my head, I believe 2 out of those 3 were Alzheimer's patients who wandered away from either their home or the nursing home. And so our search and rescue team was brought out to help locate them. And so I believe both of those were good outcomes, and I can't recall what the third one was off the top of my head. So that is the Cliff's Notes version of what the sheriff's office has done in the last year. I would be more than happy to entertain any questions that I might be able to answer tonight.
Any questions from the board members at this time? Yes, Kyle.
Let's see, on page 25, you have the average number of days in custody. Does that include both pretrial and people who are serving sentences?
That would include everybody, I believe, yes.
Okay. And so other than the one that states that it doesn't include home detention, I should assume the rest of them do include home detention.
I don't know the answer to that. I came up with these stats. If you would see the spreadsheets I had to go through to figure this out, I've spent about 3 months on it.
Yeah.
I would imagine that the days in custody would not include EHD. That would include those inside the county jail, and I can find that out for sure for you when I look back at the information. But that would include, I believe, those serving a sentence in the Champaign County Jail, but all of those in-house, not serving their sentence outside of the jail. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any further questions from the board members at this time?
This report is available on our website, champaigncountysheriff.com. And I believe you all received it via email as well.
Thank you very much, Sheriff Herman. I hadn't seen one this detailed in the past, so I totally appreciate it, and I love the graphs and the numbers and the pictures as well. So, Darlene, you had
Yeah,
some
I'm just
additional
adding on
information
to the
for us?
sheriff's report. So at your table, you have the yellow sheet, which lists behind it all of the activities and services that the county provides through its budget. Unless you read through every line item of the county's many page budget, you might not realize that we do all of these things. So I just thought it would be useful in the conversations that we're having about services in the community, if you could see what the county actually funds. This is not necessarily an exhaustive list, and I tried to just include things that were social services related, not necessarily health or safety and, those kind of things. But just thought it'd be useful and information for people to have.
Jim?
I was just looking on page, I guess it'd be 26, in custody summary report, and looking at the types of crimes that people are actually in jail for that that have been through pretrial, and the list of crimes, because there's a lot of discussion in the community about who's in jail and why they're in jail, and I see a lot of felonies or misdemeanor pretrial, petitions to revoke, traffic sentenced, but I don't see a lot of low-level crime. I don't see a lot of, jaywalking, things like that. Who's in jail?
Now, I will say that the reason why you have one date, and this is the same information I provided to the county board back in October, I think it was. The reason why you have one date, and I listed all of it here, and it's multiple pages, is because it's very difficult. I believe this makes up, for the year, I believe our 5,505 inmates made up about 226 different offenses. And this is I would say this is a good snapshot about what the whole year is about. But that's why I provided it here, because you might see one or two driving while suspended. One of them, I think I tried my best in this, and Jim, I'm glad you pointed this out, but I tried my best in here to kind of collar code those who are serving a sentence, because that's a lot different than those who are pre-trial. Somebody sentenced for driving while suspended, has already been through trial, has already plea bargained, has already done something, and that is their sentence in my jail. We also have a handful of people who have been found unfit to stand trial, and they were in my jail on October 25th waiting for a bed at the Department of Human Services, and they cannot be released on bond because there is no bond. And so that's kind of what Dottie was talking about. getting on the forefront, getting people away from jail who don't need to be there, but we're also working on getting them to the Department of Human Services faster once they're found unfit to stand trial, because we see them deteriorate every day they're in my jail. And they don't need, that's not the environment they need to be in, but that's the best we can do at this point, unfortunately. So you can take a look at all these offenses. Yeah, I would say that there are a couple of traffic offenses in here. I think you'll find that they're accompanied by misdemeanors or felonies. And there are lots of murder, attempted murder, unlawful possession of a firearm, a lot of those types of crimes in here. But I don't necessarily want to talk specifically about all those right now, but this one day, all the offenses are right in front of you. I'm told from my jail lieutenant that it's very time consuming to get all of this information, which is why I didn't provide other days for comparison and things like that. But as we go forward with whatever we're going to do with our criminal justice system here in Champaign County, I'm sure that'll be something that I'm doing is getting an overall consensus of these things. But I can tell you from working in this environment, this is very similar to the things we see in the jail every day.
Stephanie, and then Chris.
Sort of to piggyback onto to Jim's question, I think that's why that data analyst was so important, and I think that having that data analyst, I know I talk to you all the time about suggestions of data that the analyst could look at. The thing that stands out to me is the instances of domestic battery, and I just would be curious, I don't expect you to answer this, but maybe a question that we could ask of that data analyst is, are we within trends, or are we an outlier? Because I do think that having data continuing, I'm really impressed by this work that you did. Not the least of which is that it's color coordinated to match your uniforms. I noticed that. Very nice. But I think that this is a really good snapshot and a starting thing. But I think that continuing to have this kind of assessment can both drive our conversation intelligently in terms of the bed count at the jail, but also to do a better job, and an even better job than targeting the kind of programmatic pieces that we have through the different, grant allocations that we give out and everything like that. So making this, whatever sheet, match more closely with the needs. And I think that this is a really good baseline to start from. So really well done. Thank you.
Chris?
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
To piggyback on what Ms. Furtado just said, when I did my ride-along, I was very specific in wanting to go to the booking area and see what they were doing so I'd have a better understanding. And I agree that gathering some of this information is tedious. It's a very lengthy process, but in order for us to, as Stephanie mentioned, try to find out the best sorts of programs, work to develop and improve and make those work. Trying to get the detailed information at the front end is going to be very critical, and I hope that you'll pass along our appreciation and urge patience on the part of the booking people to do this data gathering so that we can all work together to accomplish what we hope to in reducing the number and time for people to be incarcerated. Thank you.
I'm hoping my new jail management system that hopefully will be in place by April will help us more easily get some of this data. That's the intent, whereas now a lot of it's Excel spreadsheets. So it's manually entered and things like that. This jail management system should help with that. Talking real quick to Stephanie's point here, I have no stats to back this up in front of me, but I will tell you that domestic battery is something that agencies struggle with nationwide. And one thing you'll see here on here is probably the majority of the misdemeanors on this one-day snapshot are domestic batteries. The reason for that, and we have 4 here, misdemeanors that are new charges. The reason for that is domestic battery is one of the only misdemeanors in the state of Illinois that you can't bond out on. So just like a felony where you may know what your bond's going to be, but you can't bond out until you see the judge, domestic battery is the same thing. And so when somebody has a domestic battery arrest, they can't be bonded out. They don't even have a bond until they see that judge the next day or the day after. And so that's kind of why there are so many of them here at this point.
Are there any other comments or questions for Sheriff Dustin or Darlene at this time? I do have, go ahead, Kyle.
Since I guess we're talking about both the social services memo and the sheriff's report.
Can you speak a little louder? Chris, please.
Sorry. I had a few questions about some of the numbers. For Developmental Disabilities Board, it lists $438,000. What is that number supposed to represent, I guess?
I think I'm missing a comma there. I think it's 4 million, but 438. The numbers to the right are it's what's in the county budget for those services. So things that are listed for grants to local communities for developmental services, $438,000. Scylla facilities is $76,000.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't necessarily take the entire budget of the agency. I looked at things that would be considered social services. So things that are planning grants or things that are coordination kinds of things like that. It did not include in this budget. So it's a rough estimate. It's not exact numbers.
Because their grants, it's more like $3.9 million.
It's several millions that they give away. That's not it's not inclusive. It's not inclusive of everything. I can revise that number.
Yeah, I
if you
guess
want.
that's why I'm confused. And then the mental health board budget is, I guess that's the total budget number. So it doesn't look like anything was excluded from that. So
Yeah, I think what I did was I didn't put a comma in the first one. I think there
Yeah.
should be another number there. I missed a number.
And
It's a
also
typo.
for the victim advocates for the state's attorney's office,
Mm-hmm.
$39,000 was the listed total.
Mhm.
Now, is that salary?
$39,000 is the amount that's in the county budget for that. So some of these things are partnerships, and other partners pay for part of it, or the state pays for part of it. But if the money flows through the county, it's included in the county budget.
Okay.
So some of this comes from state money that's given to the county for certain things. So for example, the victim assistance, part of that money comes from the state, and part of the money does not. It comes from county taxes.
So did you not include the total amount then?
It's the total
Because
amount. That's the
the
total amount that passes through the county for
Okay.
that budget item. If you look in the line item of the budget for victim offender services, that's it. I mean, the victim service line. That's what it says. That's running through the county budget.
And is that funding for, because my understanding is that victim advocates are individuals who advocate
Yes.
and coordinate with the
So it's
victims in
it's
a case.
basically staff.
So it's staff.
Mhm.
That's why I was confused, because through the state's attorney's office, we fund 3 full-time victims advocates, and then a 4th one is funded through the Child Advocacy Center. And the total that we have written down here is $39,000. So, I mean.
So the
it's
Child
not-
Advocacy Center also appears on here. So
Mhm.
that person probably in that budget.
So there's 3 that are funded through the state's attorney's office,
Mhm.
and the total you've listed is 40,000. So it seems like that's not an accurate number. There's a number of things on here too that I was sort of surprised to be listed as social services. Probation is listed. I'm not sure how that's a social service. The entire public defender's office was listed as being a social service. The nursing home.
Okay, potentially you could argue any of these offer on or where the budget item falls in the county budget because they come from different places. So the idea was to put together services that are provided for low-income residents of our community. Things that the county board has mentioned in conversation would be things that would help divert people from the justice system, things that would be alternatives, so diversion, prevention kind of activities.
So how
So
does
the public
probation fit
defender,
into
for
that?
example, or the victim services, obviously, they're in the justice system at that point, but those are things that are related to providing services for low-income people that might not be able to afford attorneys, those kind of things. You can take them out if you want. I'm not saying this is
Yeah, I mean,
comprehensive.
I
You can
just-
take them out if you want to.
I
You
mean,
can-
if we're going to have a conversation with the public about what we invest in social services, I don't think it's helpful to include things like public defender probation, the nursing home levy, electronic home detention. They may have positive aspects of them, but they're certainly not social services to the community. And also, the vast majority of this $37 million that's listed is from state and federal grants. That's not investments that we make. Most of that coming from RPC, which is a board that we only have sort of a partial stake in. So I think that if we're going to have a conversation with the public, particularly as we're discussing spending money on jails facilities, we should be, clear about what we say when it comes to what we're actually funding and investing in.
So are you suggesting that we only include things that come from public property tax in our county?
I think we should only include things that we actually fund. And like I said, a lot of these things aren't social services. I do have some concerns about the mental health boards listed, but then there's also services that the mental health board funds that are listed. So I'm concerned that with these numbers, there might be some double dipping where numbers are being counted twice. So, I mean, if we're going to have this conversation, I think that we should be a little bit more clear about what we're laying out.
Okay. It is true that much of the county's money comes from, all of RPC's money practically comes from grants. It does come to this county for services to people in the county. Most of it comes from taxes that are either federal or state. They don't come from local property taxes. So, yeah, you can divide it a lot of different ways.
Thank you, Darlene. Yes, Jim?
Well, I would disagree. I would hope that all-day Head Start has an impact on all the kids that are served by it in the community, in the county, and has a positive impact and maybe diverts them from our jail system. And that's the impact it's supposed to have. And other, Youth Assessment Center, all those programs do and should be listed, and hopefully they have the impact we expect them to have and that we're trying to have them have.
Are there any further questions from board members? I think what was fascinating to me to see is that when you look at county departments, I don't see anything that we as a board service. We are not a service board. Basically, we have departments that are the professionals behind the scenes providing direct services. And regarding the mental health board, I know for a fact that they have $5 million. So both mental health and disabilities, it's a total of over $10 million. So I know that number is missing, but I think the number is 5. So, and perhaps, Kyle, you may want to visit with Darlene and, break out some of these figures with some of these departments and visit some of these departments as social justice chair. I think that'll be a good opportunity to do that because we do want to send the correct message out there that we haven't sent thus far. I think this is a beginning, and I think it's excellent, and I think it's good, and I think it goes along with the Champaign County Sheriff's annual report. So thank you, and we'll move
I just
on.
also want to mention on the back page are all the services that the sheriff offers in the jail that are not funded by county at all. They're funded by partnering agencies, but they're provided in the jail. So he also lists many of those in his report. So I just thought you'd be interested in that as well. Many of the things we do as a county are partnerships.
I think what's also amazing is the amount of funding that RPC and programs that RPC generates. And to me, it's very impressive that they have over 365 employees. And people say, where are they? I don't see them around here. Well, they're in the community working. So it's very impressive to see what the work that RPC does regarding LIHEAP, regarding underrepresented communities and families, scholarships, and funding for rent, subsidies, and so on and so forth. Somebody should go ahead and talk with Dalito Sotomayor. He's the one that runs the programs, and both Jim and I sit on that board with Steve Summers, that we could update you as to what happens in RPC, that perhaps we ought to, do that during some other meetings. So thank you very much. Jim, I'm going to put you in a spot. And since you represent Mohammed Seymour district, if you could read into the records, page 9 of our agenda. This is a letter by one of your constituents that wants to enter this letter of, I guess, semi-protest into the records.
I will do that. Dated January 30th, 2020, to the Champaign County Treasurer's Office carbon copy to the Champaign County Board regarding the interest earned on property taxes. It is our understanding that the Champaign County Treasurer's Office earned interest on the property taxes collected during the tax levy year 2018 that were not immediately dispersed to the levying bodies, including Mahomet Seymour CUSD number 3. It is our expectation that our school district will receive this interest as it should have been distributed in a timely manner. Please expedite this payment of interest immediately. We feel obligated to remind the Champaign County Treasurer's Office of its own mission: to serve the taxpayers and taxing districts of Champaign County by managing a professional billing, collecting, short-term investing, and dispersing system for tax monies, to ensure the safety, liquidity, and yield of county funds in the custody of this office by developing and implementing a sound cash management investment policy, and to comply with the requirements of Illinois law. Sincerely, Dr. Lindsay Hall, Superintendent, Mahomet Seymour CUSD number 3, and Trent Knoxell, Chief School Business Official, Mahomet Seymour CUSD number 3.
Thank you for entering that into our documentation here, Jim. And that's a perfect segue to let you all know that the last day to apply for the treasurer's office is February 15th. I let it run for 4 weeks. So you could submit letters of interest as well as your resume to me personally at Brookins, to Megan. She's the one that's collecting that information. And I should come up with some decision after the 15th of February. I have notified the applicants that I am in receipt of their resume and cover letters, but no decisions will be taken until after the 15th of February. That is the current status of our Treasurer's Office. I would like to personally thank Stephanie Furtado, that has labored many hours in the Treasurer's Office the last few weeks, finalizing some of our accounts, as well as Jim Goss, as well as Tammy Ogden and Darlene and Pius as well. Have done mounds of work for free in the sense that they're not in the books, and they have been laboring to update 2019 budget, which is still not finalized. So I would like to personally thank them for all the hard work that they put in and on their own time. Stephanie.
I think that this Muhammad letter is really important, and I just wanted to see if maybe we could publicly respond to it. I don't know if either of you have had a chance to talk with the treasurer's office about this issue, or anybody else from staff about, I talked to Tammy briefly about it today, and maybe it would be beneficial for everybody to hear what I said. But I didn't know if either of you had a chance to check in, because I think this is a legitimate question, a legitimate inquiry, and since it was made publicly, maybe if we could respond as to, is this interest going to be paid? I don't know if either of you had had a chance to have that kind of conversation.
Yeah, I have not had that conversation. It is my understanding that past practice has been that money has been distributed, but I don't believe it's required by state statute either. But I don't know that for certain. So if anybody has something they can contradict that,
I don't know if
perfectly
it's
okay.
required by state statute. I was in the office today, and there was discussion about the interest and calculations of how it would be distributed. So I believe that they are discussing that at present.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Office of the Auditor with George Danos and his staff that has been there doing their diligent work in that office. And I thank you and your staff for basically making sure that we don't dip under.
Thank you, Geraldo.
Do you have any comments, George, that you'd like to make?
I think I'll be making them a little bit later in this committee.
And if you all have not read the paper, on Laurel's last day, she went ahead and promoted Pius as a full-time deputy treasurer. So he is now the deputy treasurer, filling in for Laurel and in that office till we find a replacement. And we also have hired Dan Welch, our ex-treasurer, that has also been working part-time diligently in that office. And I have good faith that we will square up things very shortly before the end of the month. So thank you very much, and without further ado, I give Justice and Social Services to Kyle Patterson. Kyle.
Thank you. We have our usual monthly reports that can be viewed online and we placed on file, as well as Rosecrans Reentry Financial Reports for December 2019. See, like the one agenda item we have is a resolution honoring the life of Brian Kelly. Whereas Brian Kelly served the people of Champaign County with dedication and distinction for 19 years, performing the duties of Grants and Projects Coordinator for Congressman Timothy V. Johnson and Chief Deputy for Champaign County Circuit Clerk Katie Blakeman. And whereas Brian Kelly played an integral role in the implementation and effectiveness of the Champaign County Expungement and Record Sealing Summit, providing residents with awareness and access to the opportunity to clear records of past mistakes and have a second chance on life. And whereas Brian Kelly assisted Circuit Clerk Katie Blakeman with implementation of Amnesty Week, in which all collection and late fees were waived when a debt is paid in full, creating for residents a chance to settle delinquent accounts, opening up opportunities in their lives and generating additional revenue to invest in county resources. And whereas Brian Kelly passed away peacefully at home surrounded by his family on January 21st, 2020, and now therefore be it resolved that the County Board of Champaign County hereby recognize that the life and service of Brian Kelly was an asset to the people of Champaign County and express gratitude and sincere appreciation for his lifetime of service. Presented, adopted, approved, and recorded this 20th day of February 2020. Motion. Need a motion. And microphone. Need a motion. Mr. McGuire, second by Mr. Clemens. Chair Harrellis.
No, I just wanted to thank you for the idea in writing this resolution, and I hope that we could share this, a copy of this with his family, as well as with Katie Blakeman, so that she could hang it up in her office. And Katie is in our audience as well.
Did you want to make a comment?
I too would really like to thank Kyle and Jim McGuire both for reaching out to me in drafting this resolution. We are very grateful that you chose to recognize Brian in this way. He would have been so touched, but also if you knew Brian and knew his sense of humor, he would have said, does it really take me dying to get the county board to agree on something? So really, that is exactly what he would have said. So I do really appreciate it. I appreciate so much the grace and understanding the county board and other county departments have given our office in this challenging time. We do have a couple of staff members here too. I want to recognize Laura Clark and Cecilia Phillips, who came to hear the resolution, and we appreciate your support and understanding, and truly, we really are grateful for that. Thank you.
Anybody else want to make any comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. For Chair's report, I just want to mention at this month's facilities meeting, there was an agenda item concerning the plan for the county jail. Steve, did you want to speak to what I guess you guys took a straw poll vote to?
We really did not hold a specific vote. The Facilities Committee is working on putting together a recommendation to bring to the full county board as far as what our recommendation is in terms of scope. Every time I hear $47 million, I both cringe and am somewhat upset because I know no one on our committee is in favor of spending $47 million on the facility. We are endeavoring to come up with a specific plan that we can bring to the county board for discussion and hopefully move forward at that point. I know Chair Harper is equally interested in moving forward with that respect. Hopefully by next month we will have something that we can bring to the full board or have in preparation to bring the following month.
All right, I would encourage everybody to keep an eye on the facilities agendas. I believe I'm not sure if we're all sent the agendas for that. I know some of the committees we are. But I would just keep an eye out for everybody because obviously that is one of the most pressing issues that's facing us, and the facilities committee is where a lot of that stuff's going to originate. But that's all I have, unless anybody else had any comments on that.
Thank you, Kyle, for your report. Policy, personnel, and appointments. Charles Young.
Thank you there, Chair Rosales. So, county executive, we got number one, monthly HR report, January 2020 has been accepted and placed it on file. Number two, reappointments, the county executive is recommending these two names. It's on the orange sheet. A, to the Locust Grove Cemetery applicant Dale Kirby,
So moved.
who is appointed to an unexpired term 6/30/2021. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor by saying aye. Aye. Any nay? All right, motion passed. B, to the Lincoln Legacy Committee applicant Kay Grabo, who is appointed to the term 3/1/2020 to 2/28/2023.
So
Can I get a
moved.
motion? Who that?
That'd be me.
That's you. You got the names? Okay. Second, who? Second. Oh, they fighting over second. Okay. Mike Ingram, I guess. Okay, any discussion?
Well, just if I may, I got appointed to the Lincoln Legacy Committee as the county board liaison. I didn't know a whole lot about it except their involvement in the Lincoln birthday celebration. But Kate Grabau does an amazing amount of work. There's a few people there that are really the fundamental foundation of it. So I would fully support keeping her there because we need her there.
Okay, that's cool. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nay? Motion passed. B, County Clerk, 1 January 2020. Report has been accepted and placed on file. Number two here, I believe we got to vote on this. Resolution to establish polling location for the 2020 general primary election. Can I get a motion? Steve first, Kyle second. Any discussion? John Rector.
Is the county clerk not here to discuss this?
Let me see where you at.
I'm just curious on the,
Come on up.
so is this a little bit late? The date for setting this, and then I'm confused on the resolution and the dates in the resolution also. So it's two questions, sorry.
So your first question is it a little late? Are you referring to the,
When was this, do you know when this was supposed to be presented to us?
I think before the general primary election. I think that's what typically happens. So that's what we're doing.
But the polling places have already been released to the public? This list has already been released to the public without us approving it, is that correct?
Right, because there hasn't been any changes. It's pretty usual and customary for us to present the list of polling places to the board before the election.
I apologize, let me rephrase it. These polling places has already been released to the public, is that correct?
Right.
Before it was approved by us?
Well, right. I mean, this is, yeah. I mean, you have
But it-
the list of polling places.
But it should have
Before the
been,
general election, and that is why we are bringing it to the board.
my understanding is it's supposed to be approved by us before it's released to the public, is my question.
Okay, I mean, when you say release to the public, what exactly do you mean? Have we haven't issued any statement that these are the fixed and total final polling places, okay? So that's why we're bringing the list before the board.
So this has not been released to the public at all? It hasn't been in the paper, it's not on the website, it's not on anything? No, but that's, I may be wrong, that's what I'm saying. I thought these were already released, that's where I'm confused. I thought this was supposed to be brought to us a month or two ago. That's why I'm just
No,
seeking
we're
clarification.
statutorily required to bring it to you before the general primary election.
Before the general primary.
Yes,
Okay.
that is our requirement, and that's what we're doing.
Okay, then the resolution itself, I'm confused with third paragraph, the date January 21st, 2016. I'm just not sure what that's referring to.
Where are you at? Because I may not have it in
Page 20.
page 20?
Yep.
Okay. What's your question? I'm sorry.
Oh.
I got it. Thank you. Yeah, I do. I have it right in front of me. It was just printed on the back.
Is that the last time we approved them? I just don't understand what the date is in the resolution.
It means that the last time that the, this complete list, because we're in a general and not a consolidated, this is the last time that this was approved. Because we're in the general cycle right now. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, I was just confused. That's why I'm not.
No, I know. I'm just telling you.
So do you think it'd be clear next time when Aaron write this resolution, just to indicate that?
Sure.
Just simply
Yeah,
just
we were
put it
just
in
taking
there.
it from the statute, so that's why we're just trying
Yeah,
to
just
dot all our
put it in
i's
there.
and
so.
cross all our t's. Yep.
Okay, Jim.
Hi. Some of these polling places have been changed.
No, we have no actual new polling locations and no new names.
My understanding, one in Muhammad has been changed. At least.
Hatchers, we had reports at Hatchers when stuff is submitted to the Illinois State Board for accessibility or sometimes other complaints. We have to look at the polling location, but none of the polling locations are new, if that makes sense. These are all places that have served as polling locations in Champaign County.
Go on. Mr. Goss?
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that, only because Elks Lake Pavilion, that is now Mahomet 4 and 5, or 3 and 4, sorry. That has not traditionally been the location. It's been the bigger pavilion. Elks Lake is really kind of hard to find unless you live out there and visit Lake of the Woods pretty often.
Which one are you talking about? Which?
Mahomet 3, Mahomet
Okay.
4, Lake of the Woods, Elks Lake Pavilion. If it's truly at Elks Lake as opposed to, I don't remember what the other one is. Elks Lake is out in the middle of the park. The one that it used to be at was right inside the park. And
Okay.
so I don't.
Was that Pavilion 1, do you think?
I can't answer.
Okay.
I should look
All
it up
right.
and see. But if we've moved it to Elks Lake. Yeah. Yeah, if it's truly at Elks Lake, that is not, I would argue it's less accessible than where it was before.
And I wasn't speaking, I want to be perfectly clear.
Yeah,
I wasn't speaking to the accessibility of the pavilion, only to
Well,
Hatchers.
I guess my point is, I'm not real sure why we moved it to another location when it's, ever since we've had an early voting site out there, it's been at that other pavilion, which is far more accessible.
Right. Lake of the Woods has been traditionally a polling location in Mahomet, so this is not something that is new.
No, I don't disagree, but there's
Okay.
about 4 or 5 pavilions there, and
Sure.
switching the pavilion is kind of a big deal.
Okay.
So, it's one thing. I'd like to make another note that, I mean, are we still doing election training, election judge training?
I think our last class is tomorrow.
Last class is tomorrow, so
Yeah.
I thought by statute we were supposed to have all election training completed 60 days before the election. Is that
I would
true?
have to look at that, but I do not believe that that is correct, only because during the consolidated, we were running, and this is the consolidated was such a smaller election, that we were running up almost up until the election. I'll have to
Yeah,
double check.
if you would look that up and
But
bring, or
I'm
just
pretty
shoot me an
sure,
email.
because our election schedule's been really tight, and we've kept on that pretty well, so
Yeah, if you
I'd
would
be
just shoot me an email,
surprised.
I would appreciate
I
it, because
will.
I read the statute differently,
Okay,
so.
yeah, no, I think that we're good there, but I'll shoot you an email just to double confirm that.
Any more discussion?
Charles?
McGuire?
Go ahead, Jim.
Well, if this is a change in polling place location, it would have to be moved out of this resolution as an individual polling place or location, or unless you can
I'm sorry, what are
find
you talking about?
the Elks Lake Pavilion, which is different than the Lake of the Woods location at the polling place.
Right, I do not, this is something that has been used as a polling location before.
You're stating that, I'm saying something different. Lake of the Woods may be a polling place location.
Sure, and
The
there are
Lake of the
different
Woods
pavilions.
is a huge location.
Sure,
And different polling pavilions are different locations.
Absolutely.
Within Lake of the Woods.
right,
So this would be a change in polling place location. And that would have to be different than what the resolution states, and a change in polling place location. So it's like a church on, I don't know, one corner of the building, and then a church around the corner that's the same, with the same church name, but they're two separate buildings,
sure,
even though they're the same church.
yeah.
Even though these are two different pavilions, so they're two different locations, and would be difficult for people to find.
These are, the Mohammed 3 and 4 are combined, just so everybody's clear.
Yeah, that's fine. They're just two different places.
No, they're in this. Okay, but I think to his point, he said they're two different locations here. They're actually the same. Okay.
Two different places.
Okay, who next? John Rucker, do you have a question? Anybody else?
Thanks.
Discussion on this? Once, twice, before we vote?
What's happening?
Keep it moving.
It's okay.
It was pavilion number 1 in
That's what
in the 2016.
Okay.
So that is not Elks Lake. So I guess
Okay.
for clarity for my constituency,
Sure.
I would like that clarified. Are we going to be at Elks Lake, or are we going to be at pavilion number 1?
Sure.
And I would agree that if it's going to be Elks Lake, it should not be on this resolution because it's a change of location. Also, I don't believe the Glenwood was the 2016 location. I believe it was still Hatchers at 16, which would also be a change, and that's just the ones in my district.
Well, right. And keep in mind that I just want to go back a second. During the consolidated, we had to make some changes based on availability for the consolidated. I know, just give me a second.
Yeah, I am.
So during the consolidated, we had to make changes based on availability and other factors. So what you're seeing here is no new polling locations being added. These have all been approved before.
Okay, well, then
Yes.
the problem is you reference a resolution as of January 21st of 2016 that I don't
Sure.
believe, I believe it has Lake of the Woods Pavilion number 1 and not Elks Lake Pavilion.
Okay.
And I don't believe the Glenwood is on that. So there's two instances. I guess from my standpoint, I wonder how many of these other ones we have some minor
No,
change
I
back to
don't.
the 2016. Why is it only in my district that we've got two changes that don't happen to be
Right.
correct.
I think the thing that we need to focus on too is that this is not a consolidated, that this is a general election.
Angie, again, the statute's very clear about this. If you reference a resolution on January 21st of 2016, this one should match, and it should match exactly. If it doesn't, bring us a resolution that says these polling places have changed since the January 21st, 2016, or they were changed in the, it's two resolutions is what it really needs to be.
Okay,
I
Cal Patterson Hicks. I'm sorry about
I-
that, Cal.
I guess I'm kind of confused. So this is a resolution to establish polling locations. And I guess the issue is that a location has moved from 2016 to where it is now. And I guess I'm confused of why that is relevant, because this resolution doesn't say that this is the exact copy of 2016 and nothing has changed. It acknowledges that the last time that we had set a resolution was in 2016, but there's no obligation for us to stay to that. And if a polling location is changed, I believe that this would be the appropriate resolution for us to pass it in.
Any more discussion before we vote? Once, twice? Okay, moving forward. Thank you, Angie. All in favor by saying aye? Aye. Any nay?
Nay.
Motion passed. Okay. Other business? No other business. Does anybody have any other business before the board? Okay, seeing none. Okay, go.
The chairs report the vacancies. Can we talk about those?
Yeah, okay. You want to talk about those?
Yeah.
Feel free, go ahead.
D1B, Supervisor of Assessments, expiring April 2nd, 2020. I have in front of me the statute
Okay,
that says if that person was, I'll just paraphrase, I can read the whole thing, but if that person was not to be reappointed, that person needed to be notified not more than 120 nor less than 90 days before the expiration of that term. And to the best of my knowledge, that did not occur. And Darlene and I have talked about this at the Personnel Committee, but she was never informed that this was occurring, the Supervisor of Assessment. So I think it'd be appropriate if Darlene would address that.
okay. County Executive,
yeah,
Clupple?
so the Superintendent of Assessments and I did talk about the fact that her appointment was coming due several months ago. It was actually 3 months ago. And she brought information to me about the appointment. It's a 4-year term, so it will be vacant in April. My normal process is to advertise vacancies so that the community is aware that the vacancies are occurring. So I let her know that I would be advertising the position. I did go back to her and apologize this week. My error, I think, in this process is that there was a 4-month time frame by which I needed to notify her whether I was continuing to appoint her or not. And the time frame on my other appointments is usually 2 months. And so I waited before I posted the opening until 2 months before. She is aware that I intend to reappoint her. I still will have the vacancy posted because I think the public needs to know that it's a coming vacancy, and that if people have concerns, they need to let me know. And also, I'm interested in trying to build a pool of people that might be interested in these jobs. We have, as far as I know, no other qualified applicants in this county. As with some of the other appointments that I've done, we have very limited people applying for the positions, and I'm interested in people becoming aware that these positions are available. So in Paula's case, I intend to reappoint her. She's aware of that. My mistake was not letting her know that I was putting the ad. I think also, as we normally do these, I post all of them. However, for whatever reason, the news chose to pick this one up, and so it was made a big deal. Whereas a lot of the other appointments, nobody has bothered to advertise them in the paper or other things. So that was I did notify her. The only requirement is that I notify her if I am not going to reappoint her. So there was no error of omission there. I intend to reappoint her, so she was not notified.
she was not notified, so in my opinion, if she was not notified, then the position should not be posted. I mean, this is a professional lady who learned that her appointment was being posted by the News Gazette. The statute very firmly states that she needs to be notified. There was a discussion, but in my opinion, you're telling me that you did not notify her within that time frame. And then therefore, it shouldn't even be posted. So you're going to take applications, you're going to talk to people. They think they have a chance for this job. They have this, but that it should have never been posted if Paula was not told that she wasn't going to keep the job. I don't see how you can post it.
So the posting, as I mentioned, the only requirement by statute is that I notify her if I'm not going to reappoint her. So yes, it was confusing to see the announcement that it was a vacancy, and I am still interested in whether there's any other people in the county that might ever be interested in this position in the future. So I will begin to collect a pool of people. Obviously, when I reappoint Paula, she has a 4-year term, so it's taken care of for this time. But I also know that if we have no people in the queue for upcoming vacancies, there's no way for people to get training that's required. These are jobs that require qualifications. So I do apologize for the confusion. I've apologized to Paula for the confusion, but I continue to let the public know that there are vacancies that were coming available because I think it's important for people to know. I do not think it's adequate for the county to constantly reappoint people, even though they may intend to do that, which I do in this case, without notifying the public that an appointment will be occurring and that there's a vacancy that they should be interested or concerned about what happens. Because what happens is after you do the appointment, people say, I didn't even know, and then they make a complaint or whatever, and it's after the fact. So that's the reason I posted it. I could have possibly just put an announcement in that said, you know, I'm notifying people that this person will be reappointed. Please contact me if you have any concerns. And the timing of it was off. That was my fault for the timing being off.
I understand your apology, but I guess I'm looking for a definitive. There was a conversation.
There was a conversation with Paula.
To the best of my knowledge, you never officially told her that she would not be reappointed.
I do intend to reappoint her, so I'm not going to tell her she's not going to be reappointed.
Yeah, I totally disagree, Darlene.
Okay.
This is a professional person that this was not handled properly. I understand you were sincere in your apology. I'm not questioning your intentions, but it should not be posted.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on, at least let me say this much. So that's why if you go and remember, Vice Chair John Rector, I indicated, and specifically when we passed our resolution in regards to these appointments, that there's no checks and balance, and we need to be there when you got one person making all the decisions and doing anything. These are the type of things that happen. So I indicated for the chair and vice chair to at least sit in on the process of this so we at least know what's taking place, as opposed to someone just using executive power, just determine and do what they want to do. You see? So it goes right back to what I said a long time ago. Okay. So anyhow, moving on. For the chair report, the rest of these vacancies are just information only, and you can read them on your own. And let's see if I get this right with the item on the consent agenda. Is it A2, A and B? Is that it? I believe so. A2, A and B.
9A2B.
Yeah, with 9A, 2A, and B. I think I got it right. I turn it back over to Chair Rosales.
Thank you very much for your report, Charles. Next, we have Finance, Jim Goss. Jim?
Thank you, Chair Rosales. We're on 10A, Budget Amendments Transfer. A1 is a budget amendment 200005, Fund 850, Geographic Informational System Joint Venture to Department 111, Operations and Administration. There's an increased appropriations of $39,856. Increased revenue of $24,754. The reason is the 2019 LiDAR acquisition project was delayed due to unfavorable weather conditions. The amendment is needed to cover the costs from for the from the 2020 budget, fiscal year 2020 budget. The majority of the expenditure to be paid with pass-through funds from the member agencies as reflected in requested revenue increases. Funds from the CCGISC fund balance will be used for the remainder of the expenditure. Is there such a motion? Mr. Thorsland first, second Mr. Storr, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Okay, item 2, budget amendment 20000006, Fund 107, Geographic Information System Fund to Department 010, County Board. Increased appropriations of $6,187, increased revenue $0. The reason this is the LIDAR, again, the LIDAR project scheduled for FY19 was incomplete due to unfavorable weather conditions requiring appropriation originally budgeted in FY 2019 to be reappropriated in FY 2020. Unspent FY 2019 appropriation originally budgeted for $20,000 is in the fund balance. The county's contribution towards the project is this $6,187. Is there such a motion? Mr. Clifford, second. Mr. Storr, any discussion? Mr. Storr.
Is there anybody here to speak to this?
I can speak to the 107 budget amendment. The one that you just discussed is the county's portion of that LIDAR project buy-up from our GIS fund. So it's part of the Fund 80 budget amendment, the increased revenue of $24,754. The $6,187 represents the county's contribution of that amount.
I followed along on that. I just wondered if there was somebody here to speak to let us know when the LIDAR anticipation was anticipated to be flown and when we'd get the process data back.
Yeah, no, Leanne is not here to speak to that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Okay. Yeah. Still not. Budget Amendment 19-00076 from Fund 092 Law Library to Department 074 Law Library. Increased appropriations of $2,265, increased revenue of $3,369. Reason, request increased to cover unaccounted for invoices to be paid from fiscal year 2019. Is there such a motion? Mr. Clemens, second. Mr. Young, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 4, Budget Amendment 19-00075 from Fund 080 General Corporate to Department 042 Coroner. Increased appropriations of $15,262. Increased revenue for $15,262. The reason is to cover the end of the fiscal year 2019 autopsy, toxicology, and histology expenses. The increased expenditure is offset by increased revenue in the coroner's statutory fees and reimbursement of cost line items. Is there such a motion? Mr. Clifford, second Mr. Thorsland, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 5, Budget Amendment 19-00074 from Fund 610 Working Cash Fund to Department 026 County Treasurer. increased appropriations of $2,025, increased revenue of $2,025. Reason, increased interest earnings resulted in the need for the transfer to the general fund to be increased. Is there such a motion? Mr. Ingram, second. Mr. Storr, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 6, Budget Amendment 20-0007, Fund 075, Regional Planning Commission to Department 854, Smart Energy Design Assistance. Increased appropriations, $25,000. Increased revenue, $25,000. The reason is for a grant for the smart energy design. Is there discussion? Oh, sorry. Is there a motion? Mr. Summers, second. Mr. Young, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay? Okay. That wasn't me by the way. I was not a nay, just so we get that on the record. I just couldn't spit it out. Okay, item 7, budget transfer 19-00019, Fund 679, Child Advocacy Center to Department 179, Child Advocacy Center. Total amount is $1,550. The reason is to transfer of spending authority to pay for FY 2019 liability insurance costs. Is there such a motion? Mr. Thorsland, second. Mr. Patterson, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, motion passes. Item B, the Treasurer Tax Distribution Report is on the Treasurer's website. It is interesting, I would note, for you to take a look at it, some of the things that we've been talking about. It does give you a pretty good description of how much money is still being held by the county that is due all the taxing bodies. So as we discussed, quick calculation, I think there's schools are owed about $7-8 million. Champaign's owed about $3.5 million. Urbana is owed a little over $1 million. And then you've got all the ancillary school districts. That's only the school districts as far as I got on the report today. So it is out there for you to see. Auditor, the monthly reports are there. The auditor is here, and if you would like to talk, now would be the great time.
Yeah, my staff's been busy at work, Geraldo. I appreciate your remarks about my staff. I was turning in payroll this morning, and I noticed that the accumulation of comp time is nearing 65 hours for the last 2 weeks, and that doesn't even count the 3 days that are charged to the treasurer's office by one of those very employees. So if you had the two figures, 65 plus 21, you're talking about a lot of overtime. Okay, Chairman, you have questions for me?
Oh, no, I don't.
Oh,
I
you
guess
don't?
I was going to ask you where we're at on the CAFR, but other than that, I don't have any other
Oh,
questions.
no, thank you. No, I spoke with the external auditor. We do expect a clean audit, and they're proceeding apace. I did confirm that the 2 documents that came in from the circuit clerk look good. Those were received on the 28th.
Anybody else have any, Ms. Furtado?
I just, thank you, Geraldo, that was really nice of you to say. I spent just parts of 2 days in the auditor's office doing a very tiny little bit about reconciling, trying to do some numbers on reconciling. And I just have to say, I was very, very impressed by the fact that what the staff in the auditor's office is trying to do to help us ensure, while we're working through the issue with the treasurer, that we don't fall further behind, or at least that we're treading water. I don't know what the right word for it is. It is a daunting task, and there's a lot of accounts, and the work that they've been doing. I don't want to pretend that the work that they're doing is getting us to a final reconciliation, but the work that they're doing is impressive, and and should be commended. I know folks are working late hours. Any question I ever have, they ask. I wanted to help, but I also wanted to understand the process, and yeah. I'm
Thank you, Stephanie.
Very,
Yeah.
very, you should be commended, and your staff should be commended.
I'll definitely let them know tomorrow morning.
I had one question.
Yes.
George, did you provide any reports to RPC regarding their Head Start program? They were concerned about their multi-year grant that they were about to lose if they didn't get the information
I
from the
didn't-
Treasurer's Office, I think $7 million.
It's probably about 5.5. But I spoke with the director for early childhood directly, as well as with the chief operating officer and the CEO. So I've got an open line of communication. There's nothing severe, pressing, or threatening, but I will be the first to know if there is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it. Okay, next we got under item D1, a resolution authorizing a loan to the general corporate fund from the public safety sales tax. Is there such a motion? Ms. Furtado, second Mr. Summers. For those who may not remember this or have not been involved in this, typically this is an authorization that we get this time of year, so that gives, as we run close to, we'll run close on funds possibly between now and the tax distribution. This is the ability for the treasurer's office and the auditor's office to go borrow up to $1.5 million. And we did add a paragraph in here that Ms. Furtado and I agreed on, that we needed to add this paragraph that the treasurer and the auditor are supposed to let us know when they borrow the money, and they're supposed to let us know when it's paid back. Because last year, I believe the money went out, and we're not sure when it came back, but we were assured that it came back. So at least I think we've tried to adequately protect the board so that you will know when money flows in and out of this. Discussion from board members. Mr. McGuire.
Is there a copy of that resolution here? At least that updated resolution? Do we have that?
Yeah, it's in your packet on page 38.
Jim, the paragraph
Okay, there it is.
Jim
I
was
got it.
referring to is the last paragraph.
Yep, the last paragraph is the one we added to it. Other discussion. Mr. Patterson? Oh, you had your hand up. I wasn't sure. Okay. Other discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, motion passes. Okay, item D2, a resolution abating taxes levied on outstanding bonds. Is there such a motion? Mr. Rosales, second. Mr. Clifford. Let me get to my notes on this. In my notes, I've got this as for public safety sales tax for the bonds. Am I correct, Ms. Ogden?
Yes, these are alternate revenue bonds that will be paid with public safety sales taxes.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay. And finally, D3, a resolution extending the East Mahomet Redevelopment Project Area Tax Increment Financing District and an authorizing letter of support. Is there such a motion? Mr. Rosales, second. Mr. Clemens. I would speak to this briefly since it is in my district. So this TIF exists out there. They would like to extend the timeline. This TIF is, well, a little different than some other TIFs in that it's actually only used for infrastructure. So the way that it works out there is they're wanting to extend a public road from one side of the railroad tracks across the railroad tracks and then across a new school property and come out on Prairie View Road. So they will have about 1,320 feet roughly of school property that they've got to extend this across. when Mahomet Seymour School District bought that land that their school is on, they didn't realize they bought it and they were now all of a sudden the developer. So what's that mean? Well, you get to bring in all the utilities when you're the developer. What this will do is it will allow the village to build this road as it is vital infrastructure. The overcrowding on Route 150 in the morning and in the afternoon is crazy. But they will be able to build it, it will get built, and it will alleviate a bunch of traffic. And all the extension is because it's an extension as opposed to a new TIF district, they need letters of support from all the taxing bodies involved, of which Champaign County is one of them. And then it has to go to the state legislature, and Senator Rose is planning on taking it this spring. So they started down this path. Again, it is all infrastructure. They actually hold this is all across barren land. So the taxing bodies are only out the taxes on the bare land as residential development happens in that area, and most of that area is either school, public land, zone public, or most of it's residential. There is some little commercial. Any new residential growth, 100% of that growth will go to the taxing bodies. Any new commercial growth in there, and there is some areas of that that could be considered commercial growth, 50% of that revenue would go to the taxing bodies, and the other 50% would stay in the TIF. So I'm a strong supporter of this. I've had numerous discussions with them, and I'm asking for your support on this project tonight. Mr. Summers.
Excuse me. Thank you, Jim, for providing the information. I looked at this, and my question was, why are we doing this? I know other governmental entities have TIF districts, but we don't usually have to write letters of support. So you're telling me for this to move forward, it requires letter of support from all of the taxing bodies within.
That is correct, but it's my understanding that it requires those letters of support, and then also you have to go to the state legislature, and it has to pass in there as well.
Okay, well, that answers my question, because I didn't understand why we were involved in this, but that's a rational answer, and I appreciate you providing that information. Thank you.
Mr. Thorson.
Yeah, hold on a second while I put my soapbox together. I don't like TIFs. I don't particularly care for any of them. Jim explained sort of what's going on out there. The backstory maybe is during the period of 2004 to 2008 or 9, I spent a lot of time annoying the Planning Commission in Mahomet, annoying the Board of Appeals, and annoying the village board. They were happily bending over to any developer who would come in and put up 1 or 2 or promise 1,000 houses. And they got themselves very overextended on the infrastructure. This eastern development was one of them. The school moved over there later on because the development basically wasn't doing well. And it seemed like a good idea to take up some of this land and do it. And then they've got themselves in a problem with traffic because they put the school out there. The government says that you got to have buses. They're yellow. They hold about 50 or 55 kids. And they take kids to school. The problem out in Mahomet and in a lot of school districts is nobody's on the bus. So they pay for the buses, but nobody rides them. Buses certainly alleviate a lot of traffic. I'm not in support of the TIF simply because they've had the TIF for a while. This adds another 12 years to it. If any village out there could use some infrastructure improvements in the middle of town, or to incorporate some of the areas that are still on sewer and still on septic and still on water wells, they could certainly do it. So I'm not in support of this particular TIF. I'm not in support of a lot of TIFs, but this one in particular, I think they don't need an extension. I'm sorry they got themselves in the trouble, but maybe they should spend a little money promoting those yellow buses, and maybe they should think about how fast they expanded back in the aughts, and now they're paying some of that, and they're asking some people to sacrifice revenue they could use to help beef up some development that was to the east.
Ms. Furtado.
I'm also not a fan of TIFs in general, and I just don't care for them. Jim and I did talk about this ahead of time, and I did not know the concerns that Eric expressed, and I share some of those concerns. I do think, however, while I share those concerns, I am at least glad that this particular TIF is going for infrastructure. So like on the scale of TIFs that I dislike, it would not be at the top of the list, and I could tell you all about the ones that would be. And I also think that, well, I agree with Eric, and I might not agree with their allocation of this tool. It is Muhammad's tool, and so I'll support it, even though I would agree that I might have different. If I was in charge of this, I might do something different with it, but it is their TIF. They're just asking us for support, and I do think that that sort of local decision-making power is important. So I'll vote to support it, but I'm glad that, Eric, for what you expressed, because I do think it brings up valid concerns. And
Other folks, other questions, Okay, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion. Okay, other business, I have none. Chair's report, since we've been busy patting each other on the back, I did want to take this opportunity to thank Auditor Danos and his staff and Ms. Furtado. I didn't need anything because all I've done is had a couple of meetings, so I have not done any of the heavy-handed work. But we have a long way to go to get this back on track, and I really appreciate their support and their ability to put in a lot of extra hours. And a lot of folks wouldn't necessarily do that, and they've stepped up and really kind of did it with a smile and said, we're here to do it. So I do appreciate that very much, and I think, again, pass that on from myself and Ms. Furtado, that we are very, very appreciative. So, items to be placed on the consent agenda. Okay, we've got 10A1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, D1, and D2. With that, Mr. Chairman, I resign.
I have no other business to conduct, and we stand adjourned. Thank you.